Yeah. Give me one moment here. Just give me one. There we go.
Request. There we go. All right. We'll get this. Are you waiting? I can set up for that. Waiting for it.
Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome everybody, alhamdulillah, to the live the Legacy Institute I guess discussion, inshallah, called Learning Arabic as Non-Arabs. I told somebody about this discussion and talk, and the first reaction they had was, that's a very interesting line. What does it mean to learn Arabic as non-Arabs? So anyway, we welcome everybody, alhamdulillah, to this discussion, inshallah, that hope to be beneficial based on the inshallah experiences of Sheikh Dirie, who inshallah I want him to introduce himself. He's mashallah a Shafi'i who studied Hanbali fiqh. That's the way I'm going to introduce him as, inshallah, and I hope that that will be a good introduction as a beginning. He's going to be the newest instructor, inshallah, for the Legacy Institute program, Arabic Legacy, which is going to be an 8-semester program, inshallah, and 16 months of foundational Arabic, with as well as studying 6 months of Arabic enrichment, inshallah, which is going to be application. We're going to talk about that greatly, but first I'd like to introduce Sheikh Dirie, as well as him give us an introduction to himself, inshallah, and his path to learning Arabic. Assalamu alaikum.
طيب وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. First of all, I just want to thank you for having me on this program, this discussion with you. There were a few things you asked, but your voice kind of broke up a little bit, so please do correct me if I missed anything. A little bit of background about myself. My name is Dirie. I was born in Canada, Ottawa specifically. Grew up in a city called Hamilton, about an hour from Toronto, and then my family moved to Toronto, and then I went abroad, which I guess we can get into more detail once we start talking about my history or the way I learned Arabic. Now, you mentioned also the title. What does it mean, learning Arabic as non-Arabs? Is that correct? Yeah. Well, the thing is, there are people who are ethnically Arab, even if if they were born in the West, they don't speak. They think they don't speak Arabic, but just being in an Arabic household does give you a huge advantage over someone, say, who just converted to Islam and wanted to learn Arabic, right? So those people are definitely at an advantage, but as non-Arabs, what we mean by that is someone who's ethnically Pakistani or ethnically Afghani or ethnically African or whatever it may be. They're not at the same advantage. So that's what we meant by the title. Anything I missed?
You know what's funny? I was actually just listening to a person who's a professor in I think some kind of Arabic studies, and they were saying specifically how they don't know how to speak Arabic fluently, even they're from an Arabic background. So they constantly get chided for it. It becomes an awkward conversation. They're like, you know what? Stop making fun of us. The fact that we're diaspora Arabs and we don't know how to speak Arabic properly.
Yeah.
So I guess this is a cross-cultural kind of thing, even for Arabs, born Arabs.
Yeah, I mean, it depends, right? Like some second generation, third generation Arabs. I know some areas in America, some areas in Canada, you have second, third generation Arabs, specifically like Lebanese, let's say. They might not speak that well Arabic or Arabic that well, but and then even the ones who do speak Arabic, I don't want to contradict myself here, but some Arabic dialects are so far off, classical, traditional Arabic. It's like, does that even count? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, of course.
I don't want to mention any names, but those who know.
Alhamdulillah. All right, so tell us a little bit about your journey to, first of all, everybody has a journey to learning Islamic studies, but what was your path to learning Arabic? Which one came first, learning Arabic or wanting to learn Islam? Like, which one was first?
Well, first of all, the way I started practicing was, I think we should start with that. I moved to Toronto. I started hanging out with a different crew, a more religious crew. And I remember when we moved to Toronto, I was at this MSA, and there were these brothers that were in thobes. They had beards, and they were debating over which qari was better than which. And I was amazed at that. I was like, you guys are scholars. Like, the fact that you know a qari's name, like, you're a scholar, especially with the beard and all that. It's great. So those were my companions. Like, those were my close friends. Those are the people I started hanging out with. And, as the Prophet ﷺ says, al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi, right? فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِلُ, right? That one of you, you are on the religion of your close companion. So pay attention to who you take as a close companion. So those are the people I was around. I got inspired. Some of them were applying to the Islamic University of Medina. Some of them were waiting for their acceptance. And naturally, I just wanted to seek knowledge. I just wanted to, seek knowledge. And I did not know anything at all. Like, I was, technically not a convert, but you could probably, if you saw me then, you probably can consider me a convert. I learned how to pray when I was maybe 16 years old. 17 years old. So what happened was, I was at a mosque one day, and there was a brother that was advising me. There was a taxi driver that came into the mosque. He saw me sitting there trying to read Quran. And what happened to my phone there? Yeah, sorry about that. And he said to me, sorry about that. Some technical difficulties. Am I still in the chat? In the
Yeah, I can hear you, but your Instagram is
Gotcha. I think I'm back in now. Yeah, sorry about that. So this brother said to me, "Oh, you want to seek knowledge? What you're gonna do is you're gonna start learning Quran, and then you're gonna start memorizing Hadith." And I said to him, "Memorizing Hadith? That just sounded so foreign to me." And I said to him, "In English, right?" He said, "No, in Arabic." And I was like, "Arabic? Like, I'm not Arab though. That I can't do it." So I eventually decided to go abroad. And at the time, the easiest thing for me to do was to go to Yemen. This is 10 years ago.
Okay.
Back in 2009, I went to Yemen. And sorry, we got some technical difficulties there. Am I still on the IG Live?
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, so I'll just continue then. Yeah. So what happened was, I went to Yemen in 2009.
Right.
And I started learning Arabic there. I was there for about 9 months, and I came back. And it was literally, I just jumped into the deep end. I had no Arabic training at all. I grew up with some Arabs, and they did teach me some cuss words that I don't want to say right now, which I didn't have to use in Yemen, because the Yemenis are amazing.
Every Arabic language program, right? So you're learning how to cuss them.
every language, the first thing you learn is how to swear.
Right. Right. Okay.
But because Yemenis are so nice, I didn't have to use those words. So that was it. So 9 months in Yemen, then I came back to Toronto. I was there for, I think, maybe 2 years. Then I went back to Saudi.
Okay, nice.
So I went to Saudi for the first time. Sorry.
Great. So how old were you when you started learning? You could say Islamic studies formally. I mean, you didn't tell us really what caused it. What was the precursor to you wanting to learn? What was the deal about?
For me, learning Arabic was the only way to seek knowledge. If you want to get to the primary text, ultimately you have to learn Arabic. You can't rely on translation. So it was me wanting to seek knowledge, and that entails learning Arabic. What was it? When I was in Hamilton, I always wanted to practice. I do remember wanting to practice, but there weren't programs at the mosque. There weren't enough programs at the mosque. And when I moved to Toronto, I was able to find that community.
Okay, mashallah. Great. All right. So what were some of the difficulties? What were some of the obstacles in learning Arabic? What did you come across in terms of difficulty?
Some of the obstacles in learning Arabic? Some of the obstacles in learning Arabic. There are some obstacles that a lot of people face, including myself, which was the obstacle of dialects and different versions of Arabic, right?
Right.
There's classical Arabic, and then there's the real Arabic. I remember even when I was in Saudi, we were learning Arabic in the university, and our Arabic program was on the second floor of the Faculty of Arabic. And if you just left your classroom and went downstairs and met Saudis, you wouldn't understand them. It was like they were speaking a totally different language. So the spoken Fusha Arabic had virtually no application in Saudi Arabia, and other regions are worse. Egypt, I'm sure, would be far worse. Morocco, hadith anha wala haraj, like yeah.
Right. So the
application,
the themselves, right, is what would cause you to, like, you could say that there was a difficult obstacle to overcome, whether it was Yemen or whether it was Saudi or Egypt, or I don't know. You've been to Morocco?
No, I just.
Oh, okay. You're just giving an example. Okay.
Yeah, throwing them under the bus. Yeah.
Oh, no problem. But so I mean, look, that's actually a lot of things that a lot of times what a lot of people complain about is the fact that the dialects is what throw everybody off, right? They have this dream of going to X country, whether it's let's say Morocco, let's say it's Jordan, let's say it's Egypt or Saudi, and when they get there, they the famous, I don't know if you've seen this like really interesting video on Instagram where this guy's basically enacting what it was like for him to start you actually speaking in Egyptian society, and people are like, "What are you talking? Like, Sadaqallah al-Azim." They think you're speaking the Quran, right? Like taxi drivers or whatever. And then the guy tells him like, give me tomatoes, and he's like, "Oh, why don't you speak Arabic?" So that whole thing, and especially when you come to places like Medina, or you've been to Saudi. So when you come to Mecca or Medina, a lot of people think like this is the land of the Sahaba. There's a higher standard or something like that. But then like the statement of Salman al-Farisi comes into play where al-ard la yuqaddisu ahadan, right? Land does not make anyone holy. So exactly. Okay, so if you were to give yourself advice, okay? Learning Arabic as a non-Arab, okay? So let's hear it. What would you say to yourself and what would you say to people in terms of learning? What are some things to do? What are things to watch out for?
Before I answer that, let me just mention one more major obstacle that I forgot to mention, which was there seems to be this clash between two different pedagogies, or two different, I guess, traditions. There are people that take the more classical approach to learning Arabic, which is grammar heavy. You want to learn Arabic, it's Ejrumiyah, right? Someone came to me recently, elderly lady said to me, "Oh, Dirie, did you learn Ejrumiyah?" And I'm like, how do you know the name of that book? Like, how did that book reach you, right? Ejrumiyah became synonymous with Arabic. Ejrumiyah became synonymous with Arabic, not Arabic grammar, right? Or a part of Arabic grammar. So if you're not learning Ejrumiyah, you're not learning Arabic. That's not the case, right? Of course. There's this obsession, and I've seen people, and we've all seen people who memorized, for example, Alfiya ibn Malik. They've read, big books.
What's Alfiya ibn Malik? Hold on. What's Ejrumiyah?
Ejrumiyah is a book in Arabic grammar that was a standard textbook written, I believe, in the 5th or 6th century Hijri. Alfiya ibn Malik is by a Andalusi scholar by the name of Muhammad ibn Malik, who died, I believe, late 7th century. It's 1,000 lines of poetry explaining Arabic grammar.
1,000 lines? Oh my God! Okay.
It is another version of that's a summary of the 2,000 line.
Right. So of a Kafi or Shafi, right?
Exactly. So some people I've seen people memorize this, teach this, and their Arabic's not that great. And you're like, something is wrong here. So that's one tradition. Other tradition is the more, I guess, modern approach, which is more just let's learn Arabic as a language, regardless of what Arabic grammar text we use. And other people look at that as, you're changing the tradition. This is not the way that Arabic was taught. And then these guys are like, you guys are backwards. So you're always in the middle between these two people. So
the tradition and the modern standard.
Exactly. So my advice to myself would be to, I feel like a lot of people don't know what they want. A lot of people don't know what they want. When you're learning Arabic, 100%. You need to ask yourself, are you learning Arabic to be a journalist? Are you learning Arabic to read Tafsir Ibn Kathir, maybe you're inspired to read that book and you love it, and you want to read Bukhari and you want to read these books, and you're gonna have to sacrifice something. If you want to be that journalist, you're gonna have to sacrifice a lot of grammar. If you want to read the books of the traditional books, the classical books, you're gonna have to sacrifice speaking perhaps and listening, right? So people don't know what they want in Arabic and just life in general, I guess, right? So I would say decide what you want. That's the first thing I would say.
Number one, define. So one of the things that just to get off of that particular point is a lot of times not only people define what you want. I'll give you a story of one teacher. This was in Egypt, and that's not a story for me because I haven't been to Egypt yet. But basically, the idea was that teachers there, you mashallah, you pay them, and there's plenty of Arabic teachers, and it's known and all of that stuff. So one of the teachers, this was said to me by a student. He said basically that the Westerners, when they come, they're different from everybody else. Okay, and he's like, what do you mean? He's like, listen, when students come, they say to me, I want to learn Arabic, teach me Arabic. Yeah. When the Westerners come, they say, here's a book. Okay, I want you to teach me this book. And he's like, the guy acts or the girl acts as if she knows better than I do in terms of teaching the language. So this. I mean, look, when it comes to Arabic studies, so much of our time is spent arguing about the best program, the best protocol, like the best book. Should you do Ajrumiya? Should you do Nazm Ajrumiya? Should you do the Medina series? Should you do, remember Kitab al-Asasi? That was a big thing back in the day. Should you do the Riyadh program? Should you do Mulhat al-I'rab? Should you do all of these different names? And guess what? All of them do essentially the same thing. They all cover the beginner level, and it also depends on the teacher how you teach it. So when you like that statement that you mentioned, 100% is so true, man. Like defining not only what you want. Do you want to be a journalist? Do you want to be, but also like, hey, define your teacher, and then your teacher will know where to take you. All right, so that's step one. Define what you want. What would you say is next?
Have a. I know it sounds like we hear this a lot, but it's so true. Just have a sincere intention. Sounds cliche, but if you really want to learn Arabic, you will learn Arabic. If you want to, if you want to learn it, but how many people learn other languages for dunya reasons? I think if you're sincere in your religion, you really want to learn it, you'll learn it. And it's not complicated. It's not rocket science. A lot of time is wasted in, I don't want to say useless texts, but, inefficient studies overall. There could be more efficiency. But it's sincerity, a firm plan. Like, why are you learning? Are you learning to show off? Are you learning to pick up a girl, whatever it may be? Like, just be sincere, and obviously you shouldn't do that, but sincerity, hard work, and a good, and like you mentioned, just trusting in your teacher, right? I've taught English before, and one of my worst students, I remember when I was in Saudi, I was teaching English. First day of class, he's like, okay, this is how I want you to teach me. I want you to take this book, and I'm looking at the guy, and I'm just like, who's the teacher here? I forgot. Like, so trust your teacher and just
trust
learn Arabic and trust the program. And like you mentioned, or similar, what you mentioned reminds me of in Saudi. I remember one day I was sitting there, and I was in class, and I was, to tie this back to the tradition and the modern approach. I was sitting in class one day, and I was looking around in my class, and there were some brothers from a country I'm not going to mention who focused a lot on the Arabic grammar.
Right.
And their Arabic was very poor, speaking, reading, etc.
But they knew grammar well.
They knew grammar. Like, it's a problem when you look at language as form. You look at it as like a mathematical equation, right? You see a sentence and you're already doing i'rab. You're, I think, parsing, or you're just analyzing the sentence. And it's like, no, just read the sentence, understand it, then do i'rab. So going back to the classroom, I'm in class, and there were these students, I'm not going to mention their country, and they studied all the fancy Arabic grammar. Then there were students I remember from West Africa who didn't do any of that stuff. They might have done like a modern text or two, but they got into Arabic literature as soon as possible. And I remember at the end, application right away. They're doing Arabic literature. And I remember one day we had a graduation or end of semester, party, and there was this brother from Nigeria, and he wrote this metered poem praising the teacher.
Wow.
And everyone else was like, you should not be in this level. Like, why are you here? You're writing Arabic poetry. And the guys who studied all these fancy books, they didn't understand what he was saying ultimately, right? So
you know what's interesting, on that point on West Africa in particular. I mean, like you're Somali, so you definitely comes from this background. There's a really good book by Dr. Rudolf Ware on the walking Quran.
Okay.
Right? And I'm sure you've heard of this. I don't know if you have, but he talks about how Islam became a living model where everyone learned not just the compartmentalization of the sciences, but a living example. In West Africa in particular, as well as obviously in East Africa. And when you recently Pew Study came out with a beautiful kind of poll, and I don't know if you've seen this, but how much of African Muslims pray? It's like almost 60% in some places. Wow. Right? Because the example of Islam was lived. And you give me another example. You have friends. I have friends from Senegal, from Mali, from Nigeria, from all over African countries, and literally their Arabic is so good. And you ask them why, is this exact thing that you're mentioning? Application more than just verb charts and form. Go ahead, you were saying.
Yeah, no. That's literally exactly what I was saying. I feel like there's more fluency with them, higher vocabulary. And as for the tafsir, I mean, the other side, what they say is we need more grammar. It'll help us with understanding tafsir and understanding those texts. That's later. Right. Don't worry about 6-7 years from now. Just worry about learning the language, and then that stuff will come. And by then you can do a text or two. It doesn't have to be 10 books in Arabic grammar. You know what I mean? Like there's one brother I know. He traveled to a country now, and he's doing this intensive Arabic curriculum. And he wants me to come join them. It's 9 books in Arabic grammar. I'm like, I'm not interested. Lord. I'm not interested. You know what I mean?
Sometimes I think it's overkill in the sense that it's ingraining, just like you said, the form and the structure of the language rather than its applications.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Can you repeat yourself? The form and the... Exactly. It reminds me of one time I entered a restaurant. I was in a restaurant in Saudi Arabia, and there was a sign that said "Mamnoor al-Julus." And me and these brothers were looking at it. The first thing we thought of when we saw it was Arab, right? We saw that, and we were like, "What's the? How do you analyze grammatically? Mamnoor al-Julus. Is it خبر مبتدا محذوف? Is it مبتدا خبر محذوف? Why? Meanwhile, from what I remember, we were sitting there. ممنوع الجلوس means do not sit here.
Do not sit. And you're sitting there breaking it down from a grammar perspective. Great, amazing, mashallah.
Exactly. So I think that's an example of what you're talking about, looking at the form as opposed to the meaning.
Right.
So it's not hard. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So look, one of the things that happens oftentimes is, mashallah, people who get into the Arabic language, they start losing the concept of how to teach it to beginners, because you kind of forget where you come from. It's like, for example, teaching a toddler how to walk. So oftentimes people are like, well, you just kind of move. They don't really have the conceptualization of how to remember the steps of how they themselves learned.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So give folks some practical steps here in terms of how you would go about learning the Arabic language in a practical way that doesn't lose sight of the application.
So if you're looking at an overall general type of Arabic curriculum, not one that's grammar translation focused and it's grammar heavy, there are great series out there such as Arabiya Bani Yadayk and others that I've heard about, don't have much experience with, that are based on frequency of words, right? They organize the vocabulary based on their frequency, and they give you phrases that you need right away, right? Whether it's I want an apple, or I want this, I want that, right? So these curriculums are based on frequency. Whereas if you, let's say, learn Arabic through Ajrumiya, this classical, Arabic book, it's al-kalam huwa al-lafz al-murakkab al-mufid bil-wad', right? It's talking about the philosophy of the language, what is speech. Right. Again, it's great. I'm not criticizing the book. I'm not criticizing the author. I'm not criticizing the commentators or the people. Right. It's just, I don't think it's applicable for us. So these curriculums are designed by experts to start you off with the most basic of sentences and work your way up. It kind of reminds me of think of like a gym regimen, or like a gym schedule that you have, a workout plan. What happens sometimes is some people start something, do it for a couple of weeks, stop, try something else, start that, stop, start something else, stop, and they don't complete anything. Whereas had they just completed one thing properly, they would see results, right? So I find a lot of people start programs and don't finish. This is a big issue with language.
Yeah. Right, 100%. I think that's very true, man. And one of the things, look, for me, like when I started learning, a lot of people ask me how long did it take you to learn, and I said about 6 months, and they're like, "What? How? It's impossible." Yeah. Well, okay, like you said, one of the most important things is how you take an approach to language, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the approaches is absolute immersion. So when you go to for example, Yemen, when you go to Jordan, when you go to Morocco, or whoever you go, that level of environment, being immersed, can only be as effective as your immersion. So some people, their immersion is where you're hanging out with your buddies at the local American restaurant, and you're like, hey, we're in the country. It's like going to Dubai and going to Texas Roadhouse at the Dubai Mall, and then saying you're trying to learn Arabic. It's not going to work that way, right? You're gonna have to immerse yourself. So for me, I remember very vividly spending a weekend in Umrah with some Yemeni friends was actually more effective for me than almost 2 weeks of instruction, right? So that teaches you the level, and it goes back to your level of discipline, as well as how much you're going to immerse yourself in this language. A lot of things that some people that they find obstacle is honestly their fear of making mistakes.
Yes, yeah.
I don't know if you see this. So they never want to commit mistakes. So they never want to say anything out of the fear of not committing mistakes. So the funny thing was, you've probably seen this, where I told my friends, they would laugh at me because I would call a guy a girl, a guy. I would mix up the conjugations. I don't know how to say something wrong. And I would tell them, hey, listen, you can laugh all you want. That's fine. But I want you to correct me. Yeah. So they would be like, okay, this is how you say it. I remember we sat in that same weekend. May Allah forgive one of my friends. He took us to this, basically after we did Umrah, we went to this dinner where there was professors from Al-Qura University and Dar al-Hadith. And there's a whole gathering. We're just shaved our hair, and we're sitting with hair on our ihrams. And we're like, what are you doing? He's like, what? We were invited. So then you know what they do? Because they're like, okay, they heard 2 of them are Americans. You know what they do? Of course, they ask you, where are you from? And where are you really from? Where are you really from? And all that stuff. And then they ask you in detail about, so tell us, what America's like. And I'm a first semester Arabic language teacher. This guy wants me to give him a speech. And the entire time, you know what I did? Basically, I'm speaking. And when I need to say something, I look at my friend. I say, look, كيف تقول? How do you say this? Right? And then he translates. He says it to me, and then I say it to them. And then I realize, man, subhanAllah, one of the most effective ways of really learning is, number one, making mistakes, and number two, learn 2 sentences like they're your family. كيف أقول? How do I say? And ما معنى هذا? What does this mean? So what does it do? It builds an application of vocabulary, while you're building the language. So that's great. So in terms of discipline, in terms of the program and seeing it through, what else could you say? Advice? I just wanted to share a similar story. I remember. So I spent 6 to 8 months maybe in Yemen in 2009. Came back to Canada, then I went to Saudi. So I'm in Saudi now. First semester of the Arabic program. Arabic was very poor. I mean, it was okay.
but wasn't the best. And I remember my friend got invited to a Quran school's party. Like the kids finished their tahfidh, and there was a party, a ceremony of some sort. And I remember he was invited, and he's like, "Dear, I want you to come with me." So we go there. There's at least 100 kids and their parents, or their fathers at least, right? Saudi Arabia, their fathers. So maybe like 200 people easily. And my friend's speaking at this ceremony, and he says, "Now I'm going to let my friend Dirie speak." And he gives me the mic, and I've never been like this nervous in my life. It was like, right. I was sweating bullets. He gives me this mic, and I'm trying to speak Arabic to this crowd of 200 people, and I don't remember what I said. Apparently, he still has that recording. He's gonna send it to me sometime. He said, but I do remember something similar happening to me. What you mentioned about 6 months. The thing is, people, they ask that question a lot. How long does it take to learn Arabic? You don't. When do you learn Arabic? Like, when do you, like, if someone asks you when do you learn how to ride a bike? Okay, you can when you move without falling, without training wheels, right?
Right.
Arabic. Like, when do you say you've learned Arabic, right?
Right.
Ibn Khalaway was actually asked this. One of the early grammarians, 4th century grammarians, was asked something along the lines of, how long do I need until I learn Arabic? حتى يستقيم لساني. How much Arabic should I learn until my tongue is straight, meaning I don't make grammatical mistakes? And he said something along the lines of, يا بني أتعلم النحو 50 سنة ولم يستقم لساني. Like, I've been learning Arabic 50 years, and my tongue is still crooked, right?
Right.
When do you, I mean, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, obviously depends on if there's immersion. It depends on your hard work.
Of course,
there's polyglots who, you can watch on YouTube, people learning language in a couple of weeks. Intelligence is a huge factor. Like, that's a factor.
Shafi says that, right? You're Shafi.
I don't remember that, but I should. So I mean, some people say when you dream in Arabic, when you
I still haven't dreamt in Arabic, bro. I don't know what I think that's complete nonsense. I've never dreamt in Arabic in my life. I don't know where that's coming from. So
maybe we don't.
Yeah, that's true. I haven't. I need 50 years apparently, according to Ibn Khalaway. But listen, check this out. One of the things I'll tell you. Look, man, and that's why I started laughing when you gave the story of Ibn Khalaway, because it's look, those kind of quotes are encouragement. All right, they're telling you basically. It's like, when do you stop learning? It's like Imam Ahmed, or until we die, we're never going to keep learning and all that stuff. Are you a scholar? I'm never a scholar. Those kind of like almost motivating speech words that some people take a little too literally, right? One of the things I'll mention to you that made me so happy when I was learning Arabic was when I learned about Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad. Okay, Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad is Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr's son. Okay, Muhammad is the son of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. So this is his grandson. Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad was one of the greatest fuqaha of Medina. He was one of the 7 fuqaha of Medina. He was, and obviously his aunt is who? Aisha radiallahu anha, right? His mother, meaning Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr's wife, was a Persian woman. So that already made me happy, because Persian represent, alhamdulillah, all right? So that already made me happy. So he's half Persian, half Arab. So guess what? Aisha radiallahu anha was his main teacher. That's where he got his knowledge from. So that already tells you, like, subhanAllah, the women's contribution to Ummah. One of the craziest thing was Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad used to make mistakes in Arabic language. He would have lahan. He was one of the lahana, the one who used to make mistakes in their language. So Aisha radiallahu anha would actually yell at him and say, "This is because of the Persian in you. Your mom was Persian." So, kind of like chiding him. So that made me happy, because I was like, listen, hold on a second, right? The greatest of this ummah used to make mistakes even in Arabic language, but that did not take away from their scholarship, and also didn't take away from the fact that they were scholars in Arabic, but they had just had a really high standard, right? So when we hear Ibn Khalaway, we hear Sibawayh, when we hear about others, well, mashallah, they're like, you're not going to learn really Arabic for 50 years. That's true, 100%, but that's a form of humility, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of stories like that.
100%. So tell us more. Tell us more in terms of some practical ways of learning Arabic as non-Arabs, inshallah.
Another thing I just wanted, I wrote this down because I wanted to mention this earlier. When you mentioned speaking, people are different. People have different personalities. And when it comes to language learning, everyone knows this. In the English schools abroad, like in the West, Europe, Canada, America, wherever it may be, it's a known thing that the Chinese students are really shy.
Right.
They're really shy. And maybe you saw this in the Arabic program.
Yeah,
they don't speak.
Yeah.
They don't speak. And with that, they still end up, being able to read Arabic, write Arabic, but their speaking is weaker compared to their other skills, mainly because they don't practice and because they're shy. So if you want to become a better speaker, you need to just have that confidence and let people know, I'm a foreigner. I'm just learning your language. And depending on how you say it and who you say it to, I think most people will be respectful. You mentioned Sadaqallah al-Azim. When you speak classical Arabic to uneducated Arabs, Arabs, I have to qualify that. They think it's Quran. They say Sadaqallah al-Azim. Or one time, one guy said to me, Allahumma ameen, ameen, right? Like, where are the keys? And he's like, ameen, ameen, like, so you do need to be around good people. Till today, I have friends, Arab friends. If I make a mistake or so, like a mistake or two, they'll correct me and they'll fix me. You need good companions in that regard. So that's another tip I would say. They have language programs. I don't know the names of them, but you can get like this subscription and meet with people in the target language. Say, for example, you want to learn Arabic, you can pair up with somebody in Jordan or Egypt, or wherever it may be, and you just speak Arabic to the stranger.
Oh, nice. Amazing. Okay.
They have stuff like that. And that's, again, speaking. Again, it depends on what you want. Some people want to speak. Some people, they want to read. Another tip I would have would be daily. You want to be exposed to Arabic daily. Right. You want to read something, even if it's a little bit. You want to learn, 5 to 10 vocabulary every single day, and just be consistent. Right. There are apps for that as well, where you can input the vocab and the translation. Make flashcards. That's another great tip. One thing I came across recently, I don't know if you've seen this, Hasib, is they have novels translated. Have you seen this?
Yeah,
they have English novels where it's Arabic on one side, English on the other.
English on the other. Yeah, that's really cool. I like that stuff.
Yeah. Pick up your favorite novel. If it's like a popular book, there's a high chance it'll be translated into Arabic, and just read both.
The autobiography of Malcolm X.
Really? Great. Great. Yeah. That's a great one. Yeah, you can learn about his life and Arabic at the same time. Hit two birds with one stone.
Some people haven't read the original, so they can read it in Arabic and then kind of like go side to side.
Exactly.
One of the things that really additionally helped me is, you're talking about reading comprehension as well as listening listening comprehension. So I actually kind of like molded both together. How, as you know, there's a lot of Arabic lectures that have been transcribed verbatim. Mm-hmm. So what I would do is I would read and listen at the same time. So and then I would underline every single word that I didn't know. I would go and basically look up those words, the meaning of those words, so I understand the usage and context, and then listen to it again. So I would do that from written material and then listening to it. And then I would do that with just listening, for example, like a 5-minute YouTube video about a personality that I just like listen to, Sheikh Salman Al-Ouda or Muhammad Arifi, or somebody who's charismatic and their speech is something easy to listen to. Write down every single word, so it's not just like a motivational talk I'm listening to, but at the same time go back and then understand it in context. All right, so great. What are some other ways, inshallah ta'ala? And for those of you that are listening either on Facebook and on Instagram, if you have any questions, please write down your questions, and inshallah ta'ala we'll post them up so that we can inshallah get them. But if you have any questions as of now, please write them down so that we can inshallah get Sheikh Dirie to respond. So any parting thoughts with regards to your suggestions for learning Arabic as a non-Arab?
I think in 2020, there's virtually no excuse. If you want to learn Arabic, you will learn Arabic. There are a lot of tools available now, a lot of resources available. So like I mentioned, just to have that sincere intention, and also to know that Arabic is not the goal. It's not the goal, right? You could learn fluent Arabic and understand the Quran fluently, and that just ends up being a bigger hujjah, a bigger proof against you. You know what I mean? Like, the goal is to understand these texts, to act upon them, to teach them, and whatnot, right? So don't forget the bigger picture. And also another tip I would have is, there are good resources in English as well. I'm sure you've come to realize this lately, Hasib, where it's not like, English books are totally useless. There are good resources in English that you might need to go back to further down your studies. So to always benefit from those books as well, learn Arabic.
You shared with me one, inshallah, that you said you were going to also use in teaching for our program in Arabic Legacy. It was a really, really well thought out book. Can you just remind me of the name of that book and who's it by?
The Arabiya Beni Yadik book?
No. There was like there was an English lexicon. Maybe I can pull it up. It was like an English lexicon on Arabic grammar in particular.
Haywood?
Yes.
No. Was it Haywood?
It was Haywood. You forwarded me the
was it green?
Nice.
Green cover?
Like yellow, greenish.
I'm actually partially red-green color blind, so forgive me if I'm wrong. If it was called a new Arabic grammar, I think is the title, by Haywood. It's great. I've been going through it recently, with a brother, and it's great. But that's more of the grammar translation approach to learning language, right? As opposed to the audio visual or one of those other methodologies. It's purely grammar, purely translation. He gives you good vocab. It's actually modern standard Arabic, and he does highlight some of the differences between that and traditional classic Fusha Arabic. But that's a great resource I came across recently. And then he recommends after you finish his book, you do Wright's grammar. I think it's called Wright's Grammar, which is a 2-volume book in Arabic grammar that was originally translated from German. But
great, mashallah. Just in closing thoughts and in terms of also some suggestions for people. Besides, mashallah, you said you mentioned sincerity. You mentioned to stay with the program and with an experienced teacher. You mentioned as well in terms of the books generally, if they have the same goal, it doesn't matter which book are you going to. You mentioned the importance of confidence. You mentioned the importance of not being afraid to make mistakes. You mentioned the importance of overlooking the frame or structure of the grammar, and making sure that you have a healthy form of application. Otherwise, you're going to be a grammarhead. So you these beautiful things. One of the things I want to close off with as well is that the more applied that your language is, the more you will bear fruit from it. So one of the things that I usually tell my students is that you have to put your mind like almost as a form of a child. Does a child ask why something is, other than why this happens or why that happens? For example, when you tell them this is a book, do they say, why is this a book? They don't ask you why. They almost always just take what you tell them in terms of the description of things first. So that is, interestingly enough, why so much of the Arabic, any language starts off with nouns, right? Nounal sentences. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught the names of things. Even though here it means name, it doesn't mean asma as a nouns for sure. And the implication is that understanding the meanings of things around you. So first, everything that's around you should be able to name everything sensory, which is based on a noun, person, place, or thing. and then you build off of that ideas. So what I would do on top of that is I would carry with me a small notebook that I would put in my pocket, and then everything that has a name, like silk, right? Kitab, qalam, rasasa. What's the difference between pen and pencil? That was the hardest thing for a while. I was like, cares, like pen, pencil, rasasa, right? And then you have like the cover, jild al-jawal or whatever, right? You have batari. So everything that's around you, you write down the name of, you understand, so you can understand, refer to it, because sentences are based around names. So, for example, window, it took forever to me for me to understand the word for window, nafila, right? So on and so forth. Like, for example, a shade or glasses. The difference between an umbrella and glasses, shamsiya, and like those two things.
Yeah.
And then building.
If I could just add one thing, sorry to cut you off. I think oftentimes people, what they do is they have that notebook. I don't have a notebook here. They have a notebook, and they hear an Arabic word, they just jot it down, and they look it up later. What I encourage is, why do one way? Why not do two way? Sometimes you have a phrase in English, and you want to say it in Arabic. Reverse it, right? So let's say you're in a situation, and you want to tell a guy, really, that's crazy. How do you say really, that's crazy in Arabic? So write down really, that's crazy, and find someone that's like fluently, bilingual, and reverse that. So don't just translate Arabic to English, also English, Arabic, and avoid as much as possible Google Translate. It's okay for individual words.
What are some dictionaries you recommend? Let's ask that.
I've given bay'ah, to Hansware. Hansware. Hansware is my go-to dictionary. Unless it's a more complicated word with rare occurrence, then I'll use Lanes. Lanes is just basic. That's just Hansware on steroids. Hansware on steroids is Lanes. These are both organized based on the verbal structure, though, the pattern that the word is on. So if you're looking up, for example, taqwa, taqwa, you don't look up ta, wow, no, you got to look up waqaya, yaqi, right? So you have to understand some sarf, some morphology before you can use that dictionary. But that's my go-to. Yeah.
For the beginner, like before you get to the verb, understanding verb constructs, which other ones? For example, like al-mawrid.
Nope.
Dirie is hardcore on Hansware. For me, I like I like al-mawrid. I like also al-maani.com, LMAANY. It just gives you the straight meaning without understanding the structure, which what you're saying is much more important for you to understand the root of where this word comes from, because Arabic is connected to the 3-letter root. So 100%, I'm with you on that. But for the straight, just trying to get what the word means, al-mawrid, for example, or al-maani.com does a pretty decent job as well, inshallah.
And one thing we do plan on doing in this course, inshallah, is having a crash course, mini course on how to use Hansware, right? So we're gonna have to delay that just a little bit until after we learn the patterns, and then learn that. Yeah.
Or also the different dictionaries. We're going to go over all of them, inshallah. So one of the things I wanted to just ask you as well is in terms of the program now itself. So Legacy Institute, we had mashallah, like a good discussion back and forth on building this curriculum, mashallah, with your suggestions. And the structure that you've made is just, honestly, I personally was like, I wish I had this. Could you go over with us what the Arabic Legacy program is going to be structured, the 16-month foundational, and then the 6-month, inshallah, applied linguistic enrichment, linguistics enrichment. So go ahead,
it is actually, bismillah, it is the main text we're going to be using is the internationally known Arabiya Bayn Yadayk curriculum, right? I mean, this is the teacher's copy. If you're looking for the answers are here. But I don't want you to cheat. So this is a general Arabic curriculum that covers functional, I guess, Arabic, I guess we can call it useful. I don't want to call it useful. I don't want to imply that the other stuff is not useful, but it covers speaking, writing, listening, reading. It covers all these skill sets. And it, like I said, it's based on frequency of these words and it puts it into application and proper usage. Like right off the bat, you're talking about, where you live and what your name is and things like that.
Very practical, it seems, right?
Very practical. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, it's very practical. That's the main text we're going to be using. As for Sarf, there's something I'm creating right now, pretty much done, which is going to... Sarf is morphology, basically verbs. I don't know if you guys learned Spanish in America, but in Canada we were learning French, and we were doing verb conjugation. Like I know someone's gonna laugh at me, but like je mange and tu manger, I think, and nous mangeons.
The Canadians coming out. It's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the verb conjugation, we're gonna learn that in a couple of lessons. I'm gonna try to condense that and make it as quick as possible for the stage. The grammar. We've decided to go with Tasheel al-Nahu. Tasheel al-Nahu is a book for free distribution. It's available. I believe it was some brothers in either South Africa or UK. I'm not sure entirely. Great text. I believe it's traditionally done in the Indo-Pak region. So we're going to make a course out of that. And so that's going to be the Arabic grammar component. Sarf is going to be something I'm going to customize because I don't want to go with the matun or those traditional texts. I'm just going to give them the patterns right away and whatnot. And then this is going to be our core text, inshallah. If we need other material, we'll read through Qas al-Nabiyyin, Sheikh. Sorry, my thingy. Yeah. Sheikh al-Nadawi. So some of those books for language learning, we're going to try to incorporate that. We're going to have, inshallah, like I mentioned, not mini courses, but crash courses. For how to use dictionaries. We're gonna maybe a month, 2 months in, maybe try reading some other texts. Try to hit two birds with one stone again, and learn Arabic and tazkiyah of some sort, maybe, or apply our Arabic or try to apply our Arabic on some text like spirituality, and then the idea is hopefully by 16 months to start to go through Tafsir Ibn Juzay.
Inshallah.
That's going to be the goal. That will require a little. Yeah.
That's something we studied here, man. And I wish somebody would tell me, like, after a foundational Arabic program, you're going to study Tafsir Ibn Juzay, which is honestly like mind blowing because that's a foundational tafsir, which honestly incorporates, as you know, like the Arabic language and its eloquence and its application in understanding the tafsir of the Quran. So for me personally, when I heard that, I was just like, man, this is beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's everyone's goal, right? We're learning Arabic not to, I'm assuming not to read newspapers and whatnot. It's to understand the Quran. So if we could learn or further our Arabic studies while learning tafsir of Juz Amma, let's say from Tafsir Ibn Juzay, right? I think it'll be phenomenal. I think people will really benefit.
Great. So after the 16-month foundational program in Arabic, the 6 month, which is the last portion of the program, after 16, there's 6 months of Arabic linguistics enrichment of doing Tafsir Ibn Juzay and maybe reading some spirituality texts as well to now use application of the Arabic language, right?
Exactly. That's the plan, inshallah. Yeah.
Awesome. So the last 10 minutes or so, inshallah, we have a number of questions from everywhere. So let's take the first question from Instagram. One of the students or people asked, what are the benefits of the Bain Yadayk series over the Medina series?
The Medina series, I mean, you studied in Medina. I think you can comment or add to what I'm going to say. What was made popular was just the grammar component of that curriculum. Right. So this was a complete program. You had Arabic grammar, you had literature, you have reading, you have writing. For some reason or another, I don't know why, from what I've understood, the grammar text of that curriculum reached the West. So people were only learning the Arabic grammar, but that was just part of the curriculum. Right. So we're comparing apples and oranges because this is an overall curriculum that covers all the skill sets, and that's just Arabic grammar. It's different in that sense. There's no text. I don't think there's, by the time we reach book 3 of this Arabic Bain Yadayk, reading 2 pages of text, and doing exercises on them, reading comprehension, all that. I don't think dialogue, speaking activity. Exactly.
Yeah, one of the things actually, because we sat with the author, Sheikh Fahd Rahim, and he literally was saying that he built the entire curriculum off of application. So there's a whole nother section of the program that no one knows about. There's hadith, there's tafsir, there's like ta'bir, which is basically in essence speaking more or less. And there's so many different sections that a lot of people don't get exposure to. So what all they get is basically a bunch of exercises on grammar, number one. And number two, there's so much actually that's taught that a lot of people don't know is taught within those exercises. So for example, the very first page is Hadha Masjidun Hadihi Maktabatun. Before even the discussion of that, the teacher says, listen, Arabic language is divided into three parts. Now, nouns, verbs, and consonants. And the sentences are divided into two: nounal sentences and verbal sentences, right? And that's even before that something written on the page there. So the author of the series says, listen, if someone's teaching this book and they have never taught the methodology of teaching the book, then they won't be teaching the book properly. That's why a lot of people, when they start with the Medina series, the students do a bunch of exercises and they don't know why, right? They're just doing them. So that becomes problematic from that perspective. And that's why personally, I wouldn't even, I would personally not teach the Medina series because of that. It's almost like it's missing the methodology of learning. And that's, we have another question here from Facebook. Shafa says, for someone who studied some Arabic already, LOL, the grammar way, who can read all right, what steps to take to gain fluency from slow reading to being able to read Arabic texts fluently and study from them, and general tips on increasing fluency and proficiency after an initial course? I think we already answered that in great detail of the whole thing, because this was earlier. But if you could just add to this, inshallah.
Practice. You just need to read more. That's there's no other easier way. Take the Sheikh Ninawi's book, Qas al-Nabiyyin, right? Anbiya al-Nabiyyin, right? للأطفال. Nadawi, yeah. للأطفال. Take something like that and just read, constantly read. Also try reading out loud. That helps a lot as well.
Okay, great, mashallah. We have a question. Abid asks, do you think it's helpful to learn conversational Arabic alongside grammar?
Like we mentioned, depends on your intention and your goal. But it's easily doable. There's no contradiction or and whatnot. I mean, some people say you should delay. There's some theories that say you should delay speaking, as it'll interrupt with your fluency and whatnot. But it's fine.
Okay. I was wondering about the choice of textbooks. Was Arabiyyat Bayn Yadayk the same book Sheikh Dirie learned Arabic with? Why this book over others mentioned earlier? Also, which edition will be used in the class? You mentioned that Sheikh Dirie has certification from the author of Al-Arabiyyat Bayn Yadayk himself in certifying to teach this class. So that's one of the benefits of it. But also, I'd like to hear from you. One of the reasons, why we chose Arabiyyat Bayn Yadayk.
Personally, it was not the book I initially studied from. I studied in Riyadh. We had a totally different curriculum that was, totally different. And that is a very, very outdated curriculum. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was written in the 80s, maybe the 90s. I remember a lesson talking about not just the post office, but like a telegram or something ancient. I'm not talking Telegram, the app. The Telegram, the physical thing that anybody born after the year 1990 probably doesn't know what I'm talking about. Pager, I remember a pager being mentioned in there. Very outdated, and some components of the program I do plan on using as well. Like, for example, the hadith or the tafsir, we could do a crash course on that perhaps. The adab was very good. We could probably take some stuff from there in the later area time. So to answer her question, it's not what I studied from, and I believe we answered the other parts. Yeah.
Great. Musabika says, for the Arabic program, would it be possible to take only the last 6 months after testing in?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
One of the things that we've done is we've actually made each semester standalone. Inshallah ta'ala. So one of the things, by the way, Instagram is about to end, so we're just gonna restart it, inshallah. All right.
Okay, we got a few seconds.
Okay. All right, so we're back. We're just waiting for Chef Dirie to log on. There we go. All right.
All right.
All right, great.
Oh, we're good, right?
All right, we're good. Perfect. All right, so we've designed the program in a way so that it actually anyone can step in at whatever semester that they're in, inshallah. And then also some people ask me, can we join the last 6 months? And yeah, you can join anytime. I personally prefer that you actually join maybe one semester before that, so that you can, there's a part, I think, where you need to just become part of the system rather than just dive in at the end. But I'd love to hear your thoughts as well, Habib.
Yeah, like you mentioned, where each semester is, or each section is separate. If you feel that you've done enough, and you're ready to learn Arabic through such as something like Tafsir Ibn Juzay, and you want to be part of that, then we could conduct interviews and just double check people's Arabic, because we don't want to waste your time. Ultimately, we want students to improve. And if we feel that you're not suitable for that program, then we might bump you down a level. Then, yeah, inshallah, when the time comes, inshallah.
Okay, mashallah. Samir Khan says, everyone says Arabic grammar is very hard. Do you have any easy way of teaching it?
Yeah, one of the scholars was talking about this, and he mentioned the reason why Arabic grammar is hard is because the people that teach Arabic grammar hate their lives. it's like it's a reality where unfortunately in some countries, how do I say this being politically correct? The people who end up studying Arabic as a bachelor's program,
right,
typically could not get accepted into other programs. Right, so Arabic was their plan C or plan D, right?
Oh, okay,
they go in, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. They don't like the language. They're not huge fans of the language.
So you're saying the people that went to the Arabic language faculties, they did this as a last resort because they couldn't get into other things like engineering or whatever, right?
Exactly.
That's, yeah.
So they finish their programs, and then they need a job. So they end up teachers at a secondary school or middle school, wherever it may be. They teach Arabic grammar. They hate it. The students hate it. And it created this cycle, right? Where now the next generation hates it because they hated their teacher. And then there's this stigma or idea that Arabic grammar is hard because it wasn't taught properly. It was not taught by someone that was passionate about it, someone that liked it. I'm all for simplifying stuff. I use diagrams. I use charts. And another thing is there are things universal in language. There are things that are in Arabic grammar that exist in English as well, right? I remember when I was teaching English to one Saudi, we had a lesson on direct objects and indirect objects. And he was like, what the heck is that? I'm like, okay, it's maf'ul awwal and maf'ul thani.
Right.
He was like, what the heck is maf'ul awwal and maf'ul thani? How can you have two maf'uls? And I was like, you can actually have three maf'uls. And he was like, what? It ended up being an Arabic grammar lesson. So it all depends. Okay, nothing is hard. To answer that sister's question, nothing is hard if you are passionate about it and your teacher is passionate about it and cares about the material.
Great, mashallah. Okay, awesome. Musabik asked a follow-up question. What level of fluency would someone need to be in to take the last I think she meant the last 6 months, because it's
The
not one
last
semester. It's-
part, the second
How much
part.
fluency do you need?
We would be testing grammar at the level of Tahsil and Nahu, which is the text we're going to be using. Are you familiar with the patterns and the scales in Sarf, the morphology subject that we mentioned? Are you familiar with the Thulathi, the Ruba'i, the Khumasi, the Sudasi, the different Ozan? Yeah, the verbs, patterns, and structures.
Right.
Are you familiar with that? We would maybe even spot, test your reading, right? Take a page from Tafsir ibn Juzay, read that. If it's basic vocabulary you're lacking, right? Then something like that, we would bump you down, perhaps.
Okay, great. Question here is, do we have exams after every semester, or final exam after 6 months?
Yes, I am pro exams. I am pro exams. We're gonna try our best to make it not conflict with people's university schedules. I believe they test maybe mid-December, right? Late December type of thing. So we'll try to complete the semester right before then and have an exam. My exams are hard and long, and I don't
everybody anxiety, dude.
I don't believe in just passing everyone. Yeah, you get an A for effort. No, I don't believe that. Yeah, that's not me. Yeah, so there will be exams, inshallah.
Okay, mashallah. Dirie's gonna be exam Nazi in Arabic, inshallah. He's just joking. Okay, so do we have any final questions, inshallah? Otherwise, we're gonna be wrapping up. On that note, are we going to have any assignments during the semester? Sarah asks.
Assignments at the earlier levels, no. Homework, yes. Okay,
so there will be homework, so people can have applied. What about weekly tests? See, now look, you started. I told you, man. This is every single question now is about exams. Okay, so what about weekly tests before the exams? Are we gonna have weekly tests?
We can do a midterm. That's one thing I thought of, a midterm, and then we'll do a final. And there's homework, like I mentioned, homework assignments.
Okay, so homework assignments, application work. One of the things I loved about the discussions with Sheikh Dirie is how much of it we're going to try to make it as applicable as possible with practical application lessons. And I think he's done a very good job in proposing that. Anyone who signs up, inshallah, the link is on the screen for those of you who are on Facebook. Legacy.institute. /academy. You can sign up there, inshallah. The early bird is, I think, ending Saturday, so you have one more day. And once you sign up, you will be put into a group with Sheikh Dirie is on there. You have access to him to ask questions, be able to have discussions, inshallah, in the groups that we have, and it's very interactive. And we don't spam people with things, so alhamdulillah, it's strictly for the class. And any benefits that he will share, even maybe, for example, give some practical exercises on the groups, etc. And again, the practicality, I think, is something we heavily talked about, inshallah, we're going to emphasize on. There's another question here. Do we get grades? Can I get an A? No, you can't get an A automatically, but inshallah you will. I want people with because look, people with test anxiety. I was one among them. Don't be afraid. It's not going to be like we're going to
be very afraid. Be very
afraid. But what I'm trying to say is, inshallah, we'll make it workable for all you guys with test anxiety, because I'm already sweating bullets and I'm not even taking classes. So is the goal here so we can speak Arabic and have conversations? I don't know if it has been discussed, as I missed it before. Are they saying is the goal conversational Arabic? And how do we get to that goal?
Our goal right now is to keep it as balanced as possible. We're going to be doing a lot of reading activities and whatnot, but there will be a speaking component as well. The main focus will not be speaking, but it definitely is part of the curriculum.
Great, inshallah. Barakallah fiik. And I think we have the final question here. Sayyid asks, how many parts are there to Bayn Yadayk, and will all parts be taught in the first 16 months?
Good question. Sorry, and I just remembered the ending of the last question from the other sister. I believe it was sister. We are doing the second edition. We are doing the second edition of Arabiya Bayn Yadayk. The edition that is really popular and a lot of people study from is the first edition, which was 3 levels. What they've done in the second edition is they split up the lessons and they've added some more and moved some things around. So the second edition, which is what we're teaching from, is going to be 4 books. Okay. 4 levels, sorry. 4 levels. Each level is 2 books. So there's 8 books in total. In this course, however, we are doing book 1, 2, and 3. Sorry, level 1, 2, and 3. Levels 1, 2, and 3. The 4th level, we are not going to be doing that. We're going to be applying our Arabic and learning more Arabic through Tafsir ibn Juzay and other books of spirituality. So we're not doing that 4th level of the 2nd edition. I hope that's clear.
Okay, great. Jazakumullah khair. Allah bless you, Sheikh Dirie, for your time. And for those of you who took time to listen, again, the link is legacy.institute. There is no com. Legacy.institute /academy. Sign up, inshallah ta'ala. We look forward to it. And again, Sheikh Dirie actually limited the numbers initially. He was saying 50 maximum. And I believe we're almost there anyway, just to give you guys a heads up. And it's only based on his mercy if we go more than that. So
yeah, honestly, the reason for that is for the students' benefit. Obviously, as a institute, virtual classroom can fit, I don't know what's the maximum we can have, hundreds, 1,000 perhaps,
500 or something. Yeah,
500 people. But this is not. We're not teaching chemistry here, or a lecture. It's not a lecture hall, right? So we're trying to get to know the students, have conversations with them, and 50 is really pushing it. 50 is really pushing it. So I personally asked Sheikh Hasib to stop it or cap it at 50. If there's more people, say it reaches 75, maybe we can set up a waiting list. I think we might actually need one. And if we see that there's more people, then what we can do is, inshallah, maybe have 2 timings for the class, perhaps. Allah alam. I don't want to, just one last thing I wanted to add, Sheikh Hasib, is just the importance of having tawakkul in Allah when it comes to learning Arabic. Yeah, my exams are qiyam al-layl.
Good.
Qunut.
The thing Shafi, is, so there's qunut anyway. You drop in the chat. There's gonna be Shafi Hanbali wars. Okay, everybody's Hanbali. I'm just kidding. Like, do whatever you want. Go.
There are brothers I know that never traveled. There are brothers I know that lived in Toronto, raised in Toronto, never traveled, and speak fluent Arabic and read and write fluent Arabic better than people who spent 5-10 years in Medina or Mecca. You know what I mean? So immersion is a plus if used correctly, but it's not a condition, right? You can learn Arabic from the comfort of your home. I'm not saying that as a marketing strategy or a tool or something to convince people, but it's a reality. It's a reality. You can learn Arabic if you just work hard. I mean, again, I know it sounds cliche, but it's doable, inshallah.
No, for sure. Yeah. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate Sheikh Dirie's time. And inshallah ta'ala, we look forward to starting this class. It starts September 5th. And again, all the information is on the website. I think you should definitely know where to get your information from now. If you know anybody that's interested, they can listen to this live. It's both on Facebook and Instagram put up, inshallah. And then there's a lot more coming from Legacy Institute. We have another 2 programs that we're going to be releasing. One is Advanced Arabic Studies with Sheikh Faisal Qasim, which is the level higher from advanced, intermediate, advanced up. And then we're going to have, inshallah, as well, a legacy literature book club, which is starting Sunday. So that, you have to be on it real quickly, inshallah, as much as you can. That is also on legacy.institute /academy. We're going to be going over Islam in the World by Sheikh Abul Hassan Nadwi, having interactive discussions and critical thinking and review over some of the concepts of that. Actually, it's right here so you can see it. Islam in the World. It's a really, really great book. And we're going to be discussing books in Muslim literature. Anyway, jazakumullah khair for everybody for joining. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa jazakumullah khair al-jazak wa razaqna murafaqata nabiyyina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam fi a'la jannat al-khuld. May Allah gather us with al-Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Make this beneficial. Make our intentions sincere for his sake. May it be a means for people to, not only learn Arabic, but a means to come close to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And it means to enter Jannah, inshallah ta'ala, where the weak hadith that everybody will speak Arabic is not going to apply, but inshallah that we
one last thing, see, if you don't mind, there's actually a weak hadith that there's actually a weak hadith I came across recently. It said, I'm not making this up, it says لغة أهل الجنة العربية ولغة أهل النار الهندية.
Translate.
Language of the people of Jannah Is Arabic the language of the people of hellfire? Is Hindi? Hindi or again, it's a weak hadith.
Weak hadith does not apply. So inshallah, we will we will learn and benefit, come closer to our faith through the Arabic language. Inshallah ta'ala. May Allah bless you all. Thank you for joining. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.